When I bought an Everdrive GBA a few years ago, one of the very first things I did was start loading some promising sounding Pokemon ROM hacks onto it. And of all the ones I've downloaded, Pokemon Vega looked the most promising to me. One of the things I was looking for in a hack was well-designed Fakeamon, the community-given name for new Pokemon a hacker creates and puts into his or her ROM hacks. From what I'd read, Vega was pretty much the best of the best as far as Fakeamon go, at least back in 2018 when I was downloading this, so that's where I began. Fortunately, there is an English translation that's readily available because the original hacker is Japanese, and since the original Vega is notoriously difficult, there is a modified version called Vega Minus that drops the difficulty just a little bit. It's obvious from the very first few minutes that Pokemon Vega is an exceptionally well-made fan hack that had an enormous amount of care, skill, and effort put into it. It's an all-new region, about half of the Pokemon in the game are new creations, and something like a half or maybe a third of the real Pokemon that were added in were done from the DS or later generations. Most, I think, are Gen 4, but still, having them converted into GBA sprites, I think that's pretty cool. Not only that, but the game features a handful of entirely new moves, designed from scratch. Despite all of this new addition, the game feels completely natural. One could be forgiven for mistaking it for an actual legitimate Pokemon game made by GameFreak if they're not super familiar with the series. There's no half-baked sprites, no low-effort world map, no obviously self-insert characters. It all feels totally natural and organic. The best part, though, is undoubtedly the creation of the most glorious Pokemon, past, present, or future, and the true evolution of Pikachu, the almighty electric fighting type, Machu. It may just be a blend between a yellow Machoke's body with a Pikachu's head, but it is my favorite Pokemon. Story-wise, Vega picks up where its predecessor, Pokemon Altair and Sirius, left off. I've never played them, so I went into this blind. Picking up where they left off, there are references to the protagonist's exploit in Hoenn from Altair and Sirius, but there are never any tie-ins that are major enough to necessitate playing the previous game. I had no problem following what was going on, aside from not knowing what the quote-unquote Hoenn catastrophe was, and I've never touched them. I've seen a lot of folks in the Pokemon ROM hacking community and on forums suggest just skipping straight to Vega, as from what I've read, it's a far superior game, which makes sense, given that the hacker would have honed his skills a lot during the production of Altair and Sirius, and brought those honed skills into Vega. You start the game immediately encountering new Fakeamon, as your choices are entirely new creations. Your fire starter ends up fire and steel, your water starter ends up water and poison, and your grass starter ends up grass and flying, which is a combo I think we need more of. I won't go into the details of the story, as it's actually one of the more interesting ones I've seen in a Pokemon game. It didn't interest me quite as much as Diamond and Pearl or Black and White, but it's probably number 3. But be warned, even Vega Minus, this game is tough. Expect the gym leaders to be probably 10 to 15 levels ahead of you when you get to a new town, and the surrounding Pokemon are probably going to be 10 to 15 levels below you, making grinding really tough. Vega Minus does balance that a bit by lowering the levels of gym leaders in the Elite Four so that they're probably going to be 5 to 10 levels ahead of you, but that's still going to be tougher than the average Pokemon game. The version I played is Vega Minus, because I am really impatient when it comes to grinding. And even with the slightly lower difficulty of Minus, I still found it to be an extremely tough game that took me somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 hours to beat, by which I mean clear the Elite Four and become the new champion. While Vega is extremely difficult, and Vega Minus is only moderately less difficult, this game is absolutely worthwhile for any Pokemon fan. It's a hack of Fire Red, which I personally consider to be one of the best games in the series. Maybe second to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but at least number 2. So So it's already got that going for it. Even with that, though, I would say it is probably a better Pokemon game than any of Game Freak's games after the GBA era, except for Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It's not for the faint of heart, or those unwilling to buckle down and grind, or bash your heads against a brick wall with the frustrating difficulty, but it is absolutely worth that struggle if you do have the patience. Whether you use an Everdrive on real hardware, an emulator, a reproduction cartridge from Etsy or AliExpress, whatever, it doesn't matter. However you do it, if you're a fan of Pokemon, play this game. My rating for Pokemon Vega on Game Boy Advance is an S.